coming into southwest England, spreading into Wales. Getting quite breezy as well, some gusty conditions, particularly so in the west. But for much of eastern England, much of Scotland and Northern Ireland, Thursday looks dry and bright with some sunny spells. And in the south, temperatures may get again close to 20 Celsius. But with the breeze off the North Sea, it will be somewhat fresher here. As for the long weekends, looking a bit mixed. There'll be dry and bright spells, but some heavy showers too.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, "Nana, stop arguing." I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different. Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Co, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News. The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway,
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Saturday nights on GB News.
From 6 p.m, I'll give you my unique take on the world today.
Then at 7, it's me, Calvin Robinson, with my Common Sense Crusade.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
5 times the opinion. Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories.
With us 4, plus a special guest.
And at 9, of course, it's Mark Dolan Tonight.
Saturday nights on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
No spin, no bias, no censorship. I'm Dan Wootton. Tonight, we join you live during a major security incident at Buckingham Palace, where police have arrested a man for throwing suspected shotgun cartridges into palace grounds just days before the King's coronation. Shocked eyewitnesses reported hearing what could be a controlled explosion soon after the world's media, including GB News. As you know, we've been reporting live from the palace this week ahead of the coronation, were evacuated from the area outside. This is the moment our very own Jacob Rees-Mogg was forced off air by police.
Anyway, we're just getting the latest word from the Metropolitan Police, and I don't know what it is.
Evacuate now.
We're going to have to evacuate now?
The police are live with us now and telling us that we've got to evacuate even
I don't
from this
see why we could possibly
cabin.
have to move.
So I'm very sorry to say that it is good evening for me for the time being, as I think that was probably a controlled explosion in the background. That's what it sounded like to me. We will no doubt find out later.
So that was the moment that you could hear some sort of explosion from within Buckingham Palace, potentially a controlled explosion by the police. There is currently a vast police presence outside the palace and strict cordons remain in place. The arrested man was also found to be in possession of a suspicious bag, police have told us tonight. Now, King Charles is said to have been in residence at the palace at the time of the incident after hosting Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese this afternoon. So we'll bring you more as we have it throughout the show, including in our news bulletins, but also on the way tonight. Slippery Starmer and Sue Gray collaborators in a Partygate plot? Well, the Daily Telegraph has reported that a bombshell Cabinet Office report will reveal the senior civil service was in talks with the Labour leader while still advising PMs investigating Boris Johnson. But it's been revealed that Gray astonishingly refuses to cooperate, and senior Tories want answers.
Thoughts on Sue Gray talking to Labour while involved with Partygate?
If that is what the report says, I do think Keir Starmer has got some serious questions to answer.
I'll reveal in my digest soon while I think that Partygate was a civil service blob, an MSM-driven stitch-up to drive Boris from office and usher in a Starmer administration. Before my superstar panel give their view, tonight I'm joined by our queen, Amanda Platel, Kelvin Robinson and Rebecca Reid. Then we ramp up our countdown to the King's coronation with a stellar lineup of royal experts. Lady Colin Campbell and Tom Bauer offer their unfiltered analysis on Meghan's week of desperate PR stunts, the estranged Markle family's plea to the destructive Duchess, Princess Anne's extraordinary anti-woke outburst and so much more. Plus, star US journalist Megyn Kelly investigates if King Charles is better off without the toxic Sussexes after a bombshell poll exposed the couple's plummeting popularity. And with Buckingham Palace distancing itself from the growing row, is it wrong to be asked to pledge allegiance to King Charles's wayward heirs, Princes Andrew and Harry? Dr. Tessa Dunlop takes on Anne Widdecombe in the clash. Also coming up tonight, after her husband was expelled by the Tory party for speaking up for vaccine victims, Pavina Bridgen joins me live to hit out at what she claims is the political persecution of her family as she prepares to pull back the veil on Westminster wives with a bombshell new book. Don't miss that exclusive interview later in the show. Elsewhere tonight, you'll be surprised to learn motorists have finally lost all patience with Just Stop Oil's deranged protests.
You're right.
It's gone over a foot.
Are you okay?
It's gone over a foot.
I warned these eco-terrorists that someone would end up getting hurt, so more of that dramatic footage coming up later. Plus, as Humza Useless is pressured to make a statement to Parliament about the governance of the SNP, do the opposition parties in Scotland have a golden opportunity and duty to break the separatist stranglehold in Holyrood? We'll debate the ongoing SNP scandal as I crown today's greatest Briton and Union jackass. As ever, stay tuned for tomorrow's newspaper front pages, hot off the press too. This is Dan Wootton Tonight. Let's go. You're watching GB News, Britain's news channel. Of course, I have been on air for the past hour with this developing story tonight from Buckingham Palace of an arrest and sounds of what could be a controlled explosion. I want to bring in now our home and security editor, Mark White. So, Mark, some dramatic scenes from Buckingham Palace just 4 days before the coronation. Is this anything to worry about, though?
Well, yeah, I think certainly it is an incident that is potentially of note because we don't know at this stage what the motivation behind whatever this man did at the gates of Buckingham Palace. Now, according to the Metropolitan Police, the suspect threw shotgun cartridges over the fence and into the main area inside Buckingham Palace itself. That is clearly a very alarming incident in itself, but just what was the potential motivation? That's what the police will be working really in a fast time investigation now to determine who this individual is. And of course, more importantly, is this individual linked to any others that may be planning to do something similar or something worse? These are the key questions that the detectives of the counter-terrorism unit, which I'm sure will be overseeing this initially just to determine whether it is something that they should get involved in, or whether it's something they should take a step back from and let a normal CID, if you like, continue to investigate what this incident was. Until we know exactly who the individual was and what their potential motivation was, then we don't know just quite how seriously to treat this.
Mark White, I just want to play you the dramatic moment that took place here on GB News in the past hour, where Jacob Rees-Mogg was evacuating live just as police were... Sorry, Jacob Rees-Mogg was broadcasting live just as police were trying to evacuate him from the Buckingham Palace complex. Just before he went off air, we actually heard that explosion. Have a watch of this.
Anyway, we're just getting the latest word from the Metropolitan Police, and I don't know what it is.
Evacuate now.
We're going to have to evacuate now?
The police are live with us now and are telling us that we've got to evacuate even
I don't
from this
see why we could possibly
cabin.
have to move.
So I'm very sorry to say that it is good evening from me for the time being, as I think that was probably a controlled explosion in the background. That's what it sounded like to me. We will no doubt find out later.
Well, firstly, you've got to say, Mark White, Michael Cole and Jacob Rees-Mogg just epitomise the keep calm and carry on British spirit, which we love to see. But what did you make of that explosion you heard in the background? Mark, from your experience, is that likely to have been a Met Police-controlled explosion within the grounds of Buckingham Palace?
Yeah, I think Jacob really hit the nail on the head there in terms of what that was. It sounded like a lower level explosion that you would associate with a controlled explosion. Had this been an improvised explosive device, it would have been much louder. The porta cabin they were in would have been physically shaking or worse. Now, it's irritating, of course it is. If you're in the middle of a live broadcast, you're there, you've been asked to move on by the police and the security services. But of course, they've got to get control of the situation, Dan. That's their first priority, is to determine just how significant this incident is, whether there's more than one individual involved, and clearing members of the public out of the area is what they do. Once they get enough in the way of resources into that immediate area, they'll push people back to what they consider to be a sort of safer outer cordon to allow those specialist officers to work in that area and determine as quickly as they can what the level of the threat is.
Indeed. Well, look, Mark White, our Home and Security editor, please keep on this for us tonight. Bring us any new developments on this, as always. He's the best in the business. I just want to quickly cross back to Jacob now, Jacob Rees-Mogg. Jacob, what were you told about that explosion that you heard?
I haven't been told any more than you've heard. Can I, first of all, thank you for standing in at short notice for my hour-long programme. It's very much appreciated. You and the camera crew here have been absolutely first-rate. But no, we've heard nothing. We were just told it was a security problem as we were moved out of this pod that we're currently corner, and very politely said, would we leave, at which point the bang went off, as you've heard, which, as a non-expert, I assumed must be a controlled explosion. But I hear that behind me, at what Michael Cole tells me is the Privy Purse gate, the police are sweeping up fragments and are looking at things very carefully, probably collecting forensic evidence to bring against the person that they have arrested. OK,
and Michael Cole, are you back in the studio?
It was a nasty little incident, but as it says in the song, it's all over now. Calm has been restored. A few minutes ago, Jacob and I were enjoying listening to a military band, the fifes and drums. Everything is back in place. The Sovereign Standard is flying over Buckingham Palace, and calm has been restored in Southwest 1.
OK. Well, great news.
You were absolutely right earlier on about the Standard flying above both Clarence House and Buckingham Palace because of the renovations in Buckingham Palace. So, whereas it used to be an absolutely golden indicator of where the sovereign physically was, that isn't currently as golden as it used to be.
Indeed, so perhaps the King wasn't there. Well, look, I have to say, if I was ever in trouble, if I was ever in a crisis situation, I want Jacob Rees-Mogg and Michael Cole by my side, because apparently that explosion was super loud, and you didn't even flinch. You did not even move. But look, thank you both so much, Jacob Rees-Mogg and Michael Cole, who will be back from Buckingham Palace tomorrow. I'm going to cross to Polly Middlehurst now, though, to run through the key details of this breaking incident outside Buckingham Palace tonight.
Dan, thank you, and good evening to you. Our top story tonight on GB News, as you've been hearing, a man has been arrested on suspicion of an offensive weapon near the gates of Buckingham Palace after throwing suspected shotgun cartridges into the palace grounds. The Metropolitan Police have said the items have since been recovered and will be taken away for specialist examination. People had to be evacuated from the grounds of the palace before a controlled explosion was carried out. There have been no reports of any shots fired or any injuries. Cordons, though, are now in place after the man was also found to be in possession of a suspicious bag. Details coming to us all the time on that. We'll keep you updated throughout the evening. Well, the main story on GB News today is that more than 1 million NHS staff in England will receive a 5% pay rise. Health unions representing the majority of NHS workers have recommended that a revised pay offer made by the government should be implemented. Members of the NHS Staff Council said the unions agreed to the deal for staff, which includes all NHS workers, apart from doctors, dentists and senior managers. The Royal College of Nursing and the Unite Union, though, voted against the pay deal. The Health Secretary, Steve Barclay, said the government will implement the pay rise for NHS workers and is urging the remaining unions to accept the deal.
It's a good day for NHS staff, but it's also a good day for patients. It will allow us to move forward. Now the NHS Staff Council has ratified this deal. It's been accepted by the majority of the NHS Staff Council, and we can now move forward, focus together on the patients, and also ensure that staff get the pay rise much sooner than would have been the case under the pay review body process.
And in a truncated news bulletin for you tonight, one last story. The Partygate investigator Sue Gray has declined to speak to an inquiry surrounding discussions with Labour about a senior party role. The Deputy Prime Minister says the probe into her planned switch from Whitehall to become Sir Keir Starmer's Chief of Staff has been paused while the next steps are being considered. Oliver Dowden says it's up to the anti-corruption watchdog to recommend how long to delay the former senior official's start date with Labour. Labour insisted that Miss Gray has fully cooperated. On TV, online, DAB+ radio and on the TuneIn app. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Now, it's not just the breaking news out of Buckingham Palace getting everyone talking tonight. There has also been astonishing news breaking out of Westminster that shows the stitch-up between Boris witch hunter-in-chief Sue Gray and Sir Keir's Labour Party is very real indeed. Even though Slippery Starmer insisted the apparently non-biased civil servant who conducted the inquiry into the ludicrous Partygate saga would reveal exactly when her talks began to jump ship and become as Chief of Staff, she has in fact taken a vow of silence. In an extraordinary statement released to Parliament tonight, the Deputy Prime Minister, Oliver Dowden, has revealed Ms Gray has refused to cooperate in the inquiry. He said, I can update the House that Ms Gray was given the opportunity to make representations as part of this process, but chose not to do so. So that's right. The woman who demanded every cough and spit from the former Prime Minister about whether he ate a piece of cake in his office as part of a media-driven witch hunt won't answer basic questions about her own scandal. This whole thing stinks. Especially given the Daily Telegraph this morning revealed details of the as-yet unpublished Cabinet Office report, which claimed Gray held secret talks with Starmer while working for the team advising the Commons Partygate investigation. Now, Starmer insisted this morning no rules have been broken. But
I've heard you refer to yourself previously as Mr. Rules. You like sticking to the rules, don't you? So I'm curious to know what you think about something we're expecting to hear today, which is more about the appointment of Sue Gray. Did she break any code of conduct by talking to you, by talking about that job, while she was also doing something else?
Firstly, I had no discussions with her while she was investigating Boris Johnson whatsoever. I don't think anybody is suggesting that that is the case. I'm confident she hasn't broken any of the rules.
But if that really is the case, why won't Sue Gray answer the same basic question that Starmer has refused to tackle time and time again? When did their partisan discussions start?
Did you first approach Sue Gray to be your Chief of Staff?
Nick, I know her personally. I met her when I was Director of Public Prosecution.
Might I ask when you first approached her to be your Chief of Staff?
I've been on the lookout for a Chief of Staff for a little while now.
So when did you approach? Can I ask when you approached Sue?
Look,
if I may call her, sir.
I've been looking for a chief of staff for a number of weeks now.
I will try again, and obviously you don't have to answer, but when did you first contact Sue Gray about the possibility of becoming your chief of staff?
Well, Nick, that's going to be laid out by Sue.
But you can't tell me that.
Nick, nothing improper at all.
No, but you can't tell me when you first approached her.
I've been looking for a chief of staff for a little while.
Why won't
but
you tell me,
there's nothing improper at all.
No. But just answer why you won't tell me when you first made contact with her.
I'm not going to go through lock, stock and barrel, but there's nothing improper.
If it's not improper, why won't you say, it was a month ago, Nick?
It was. I've been looking for some time, and there's nothing improper in the slightest.
So I repeat, this whole thing stinks. I always believed, and told you here regularly, that Partygate was a civil service blob and MSM-driven stitch-up to drive Boris Johnson from office and usher in a Starmer administration. But never would I have believed its author, Sue Gray, would jump ship to work for Starmer. I mean, this is more than a conflict of interest. It's actually unbelievable. As a senior Conservative source told the Daily Telegraph, increasingly, it seems that Boris Johnson was stitched up by a long-running and multi-layered plot, which is now unravelling. So let's hope our biased MSM follow this gravely disturbing story with the same craven obsession they pursued Partygate. But you know as well as I do, there's zero chance of that. And that's a huge part of the problem. But to respond now, my superstar panel. Top Daily Mail columnist, our very own queen at GB News, Amanda Platel, the Conservative commentator and GB News presenter, the Reverend Calvin Robinson, and the author and journalist, Rebecca Reid. Well, goodness me, Amanda, I've had quite a night so far with everything going on at Buckingham Palace, but I have to say, you have put a smile on my face.
Oh, Dan, I'm so pleased. That's what I'm here for.
But this is an extraordinary revelation from the Deputy Prime Minister tonight. I know it's been overshadowed by the events at Buckingham Palace.
I know.
But I'm sorry, Sue Gray refusing to cooperate. What the hell?
There's a simple fact here that when Starmer refused to answer when he knew. The leak in the Telegraph says they were in talks in May last year, 2022, when she was investigating Boris over Partygate. It was a witch hunt. Boris, the whole thing should be canned. The whole decision should be canned, and she should be never allowed to work in politics again. What she's done today is completely disgraceful. Imagine if Boris had turned around and said, I'm not giving any answers to this inquiry. Yeah. She's demanded by parliamentary regulations to do it. Get rid of her. She's finished.
And Calvin Robinson, people like me accused all the time of being paranoid. You know, oh, no. The civil service are totally unbiased. No, they're not. The woman conducting the investigation that finished off Boris Johnson is negotiating with Keir Starmer to go and be his chief of staff. This is an extraordinary stitch-up.
It's the double standards that really gets me. The fact that they treated Boris Johnson so badly compared to Keir Starmer, who we all saw having a pint and a curry, and he got away with it. Boris Johnson didn't. And at the same time, Boris worked with Sue Gray in her report, but she refuses to work with Parliament in her report on her. The double standards throughout. Maybe civil servants should not be allowed to become partisan. Maybe they should have to stay.
But maybe she was always partisan. I'd like to know when if she's got a private membership of the Labour Party and how far it goes back.
I mean, I'm not sure how you get people who are politically engaged working in politics who don't have their own political opinions. But I would like to clarify that it wasn't Partygate that finished Boris Johnson, it was the Chris Pincher thing. I think we're completely forgetting that, Boris Johnson...
No, it was Partygate.
He was turned on by all of his colleagues, and it was the Chris Pincher scandal as much as anything else. We talk about Partygate all the time, but that was what did it.
The drumbeat of Partygate had run for month
because people were genuinely upset about it, because people couldn't be with their dying relatives, and we know there were multiple parties down the street.
That does not give you the justification.
I didn't care at the time. I didn't care about the parties. I would have had a party. I would have gone to the party.
Yeah.
Given what you know, doesn't give you justification to maliciously bring down an elected Prime Minister.
And given what you know now, Rebecca, can you just be non-partisan for one moment and tell me honestly that you trust that Sue Gray is an honest broker who fairly investigated Boris Johnson?
Sue Gray did an investigation. It was not her responsibility to decide whether he was guilty or not. She merely compiled the evidence. Of course, like
she
all
selectively compiled the evidence.
Agenda, we all do. But if there were no parties, she couldn't have produced evidence of there being parties. Ultimately, she did. She was employed to do a job. She did a job. The job came to an end. She looked for her next job. Her next job was a Keir Starmer. There is no reason there is no problem there at all, as far as I'm concerned.
OK. Rebecca Reid, Calvin Robinson, and our Queen Blatel, my superstar panel, with us all night, but also on the way. After her husband was kicked out of the Tory party for criticising the COVID vaccine, Navina Bridgen joins me live to hit out at what she calls the political persecution of her family. And she'll tell all about unleashing a bombshell book. Guess what it's called? Confessions of a Westminster Wife. But up next, in the clash, with Buckingham Palace distancing itself from the growing row over pledging allegiance to King Charles, is it wrong to be asked to swear an oath to Charles's wayward heirs, Prince Andrew and Harry? Dr. Tess Dunlop takes on Anne Widdecombe to battle this one out. But what do you think? Dan at gbnews.uk. Vote in our poll at GB News on Twitter. Back after this.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely
stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed. So I guess they've always been quite woke. That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories.
Right, folks, that was a spicy one, wasn't it?
With us four, plus a special guest.
Sometimes she has to stick her foot in it. Sometimes she has to say things as they are.
Sometimes I think we should keep the refugees and send the pensioners to Rwanda. Then we'd be in a much better state.
Well, Benjamin, that is...
The Saturday 5. Saturday nights from 8. Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Megyn Kelly on the way, but time now for the clash. And with the coronation now just days away, Buckingham Palace's row with Justin Welby over his invitation to the public to pledge allegiance to the King is threatening to turn ugly. The Sun newspaper reports that fears are growing inside the palace that the plan is casting a shadow over the celebrations, and the backlash has even extended to staunch royalists like our very own Angela Levin. One senior palace source bluntly told the paper the Archbishop of Canterbury has gone off-piste on this one. The proposed oath reads, "I swear that I will pay true allegiance to your majesty and to your heirs and successors." But critics say it raises the prospect of the public swearing an oath to both disgraced Prince Andrew and treacherous Prince Harry. So what do you think? Is it wrong to be asked to pledge your allegiance to Prince Charles's heirs, Andrew and Harry? Dan at gbnews.uk voted our poll at GB News, but I'm joined now by the esteemed royal author Dr Tessa Dunlop and the former Tory minister Anne Widdecombe. So, Anne, despite the fact that the heirs and successors are included, and it could include Harry and Andrew, you're actually OK with this pledge, right?
I'm perfectly OK with it. I mean, first of all, it's not compulsory. You know, the Archbishop will actually say those who so desire. So you don't have to do it if you don't want to do it. Secondly, this is exactly the same oath as every parliamentarian takes. And, you know, no parliamentarian stands there and says, I don't think I'll take my seat because I've got an oath that might conceivably, a long way down the line of succession, you know, cause me to do something I don't want to do. The armed forces take it. This is a very, very standard oath. And what are we getting excited about? I mean, there are 4 people between Charles and Harry, and Andrew, he's so far down the line, I'm probably in front of him. You know,
You should be. You definitely should be.
Well, this is, nobody wants us to go wild with joy. Nobody wants us to enjoy it. They want to make trouble, and this is, you know, just a load of nonsense.
OK, well, Tessa Dunlop, I put it to you, you're troublemaking over this. You're stirring the pot to try and unsettle poor King Charles.
No, au contraire, Dan. Actually, I was euphoric with a sort of perverse joy that finally something had united left and right. Angela Levin agreeing with all the Republicans for one moment that actually what was required of them was making them feel slightly queasy. And rather than disagreeing with it, I'm just flabbergasted by the stupidity of it.
But Anne says just don't do it then. Just don't do it.
Don't do it. Just don't take it.
What's your issue?
Take it. You don't have to.
No, but of course, I agree.
A parliamentarian takes that oath.
But
you know, are you saying
Anne,
all the Labour Party should back out now?
But you know, as a former parliamentarian and ditto of those serving in the military, that's grist to the mill. That's part of the establishment world you operate in. But to throw out that idea that we should look at the small print and swear allegiance in a sort of medieval style, not just to the king, but to his heirs and successors.
Anne's laughing at you, Tessa. She
can
thinks you're
laugh at me,
being ridiculous.
She will do me the honour of allowing me to finish. That reminds people of the deeply uncomfortable fact that this family is foisted upon the nation. Now, I happen to be
no, it's not.
a monarchist.
We choose to have them.
I'm sorry, Dan. It is. Whether you swear the oath or not, we have no say over whether we have a monarchy and indeed which person occupies the throne. Now, if you're like me and Anne and we're very united in this, we're monarchists, so be it. But actually, for a large number of people, they feel a bit peculiar because they realise that doesn't work
Anne,
with their democratic
all
ideals.
of the polls, Anne, show that even after the death of Queen Elizabeth II, coming into the reign of King Charles III, the idea of a hereditary monarchy retains overwhelming support of the British public.
No.
But Anne, that's what the polls show.
Well, hang on, you're not called Anne, Tessa. And in fact, the biggest survey of this, done, which was published in the Mail, that showed that there was an really overwhelming support for the idea of a monarchy. I mean, people like it because it is a bit of a curiosity, but they also like it because the monarch is above politics. I don't want President Blair. Tessa probably does. No. You know, I don't want a president. I want a monarch who is above it all. And as I say, every single parliamentarian, from the most right-wing one to the most left-wing one, takes that oath, to heirs and successors, takes that oath, and we're not allowed to take our seats unless we do it. I did it as a parliamentarian. I did it as a Privy Councillor. What is the issue?
Well, indeed. Tessa Dunlop, I just want you to put your royal historian hat on for a moment, because we have had this incident at Buckingham Palace that we've been reporting on live at GB News tonight. Shotgun cartridges thrown into the grounds of Buckingham Palace. A controlled explosion that we don't know it was a controlled explosion. That's what we're assuming. There's been no confirmation from the Met Police as yet as to what that explosion from Buckingham Palace was. Likely a controlled explosion. Now, you say there's a real precedent for attacks on the monarch in the lead up to the coronation. So it's very important that security is at the most high alert.
Security is paramount. And love them or not, being royal isn't for the faint-hearted. The very public persona they have means they are inevitably a target. Do you know how many times, I wonder if either Anne or you know how many times Victoria was the direct target of attacks at the hands or the guns?
No, tell me.
7 times. There was, of course, way too many unhinged individuals post the Napoleonic Wars with flintlock pistols. Thank goodness most of them didn't work. 7 times men were tried. Many of them were bundled off to poor old Australia for trying to take the life of the Queen. In 1872, after a big service to commemorate the recovery of her son, eventually Edward VII, she was accosted, and this ties in with tonight, within the grounds of Buckingham Palace by a Fenian with a gun. Luckily, he didn't hit his target. Oh, by the way, John Brown saved her, you'll be glad to hear.
Good.
But even Charles is not a stranger to this. His investiture in 1969, of course, there was those Welsh nationalist paramilitaries. There was attempts with bombing. And in fact, it's always thought that the 2 men who died at the hands of those bombs, which exploded on the morning of the investiture, it's thought they were the men who actually...
And the incident in Australia, of course, as well, when he was on stage when a man invaded with pistol in hand. Anne Widdecombe, do you feel concerned that this man was able to lob shotgun cartridges into the grounds of Buckingham Palace at all 4 days before the coronation? Does that suggest that there are holes in what we have been assured is a massive security operation?
I don't think so. I mean, this was not an effective attack. By the way, you're talking about the monarch being attacked. We shouldn't forget that Princess Anne was attacked in the Mall, you know, and she wasn't, the heir to the throne. I don't think we need to start casting blame and looking to cast blame. It is much more productive to seek to make sure that as far as we possibly can, and you can only ever say that Charles is safe until the coronation and beyond. That's all we can say. I'm not going to cast blame around the place. That is a game that the press play. Sometimes it isn't a useful one.
OK.
But of course, finally, if I may, a sober reminder that perhaps Harry is within his rights, challenging our Home Office for that security.
Oh, there you are. There you go. You just had to get that one. And esteemed royal author Dr. Tessa Dunlop, let me tell you the name of the book, Elizabeth and Philip, A Story of Young Love, Marriage and Monarchy, and our very own former Tory minister, Anne Widdecombe. So who do you agree with? Is it wrong, going back to the original question of our clash, to be asked to pledge allegiance to King Charles's heirs, Andrew and Harry? Yvonne writes, no, I would never ever swear allegiance to Harry or Andrew. They should be ignored. It's wrong to ask. From Sean, no, Andrew and Harry are 2 embarrassing royals that have no shame in themselves. And from Laura, Andrew will never be anywhere near the throne. If the worst ever happened and he was, then we would again be asked to pledge allegiance to him, at which point we'd refuse and ask for Beatrice. And your verdict is now in 68% of you say it is wrong to make this pledge given the heirs are included. 32% of you say it isn't. Coming up, we'll bring you more from Buckingham Palace after police arrested a man for throwing suspected shotgun cartridges into the grounds just days before the coronation. But up next, as Samantha Markle hits out at her Duchess sister for abandoning her family and engaging in self-glorification while her father makes a desperate deathbed plea, has Meghan's uncompassionate behaviour yet again shamed the royal family? Our royal experts, Lady Colin Campbell and Phil Dampier, offer their unfiltered analysis after this.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prisons? I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News, the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories.
Right, folks, that was a spicy one, wasn't it?
With us four, plus a special guest.
Sometimes she has to stick her foot in it. Sometimes she has to say things as they are.
Sometimes I think we should keep the refugees and send the pensioners to Rwanda. Then we'd be in a much better state.
Well, Benjamin, that is
The Saturday 5. Saturday nights from 8. Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m. Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Sunday from 11. Join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Megyn Kelly returns soon, but our countdown to the coronation continues first with our royal masterminds, Lady Colin Campbell and Phil Dampier. And the Montecito Mona, the Duchess of Sussex, has done her best to derail the coronation preparations of King Charles III. As I write in a new Mail Online column tonight, the Hollywood announcement, dramatic makeover and basketball PDA that wasn't, why Meghan's PR stunts are a shameful bid to steal attention from the King in the coronation week. But it's her inability to reconcile with her father, the very decent man, Thomas Markle, which I believe has made the situation much worse, with his re-emergence for the first time since suffering a near-fatal stroke.
What would you say to her? Let's go somewhere and talk. And I say, what's wrong? What? How can I fix this? How can I fix this?
And last night, sister to Meghan and friend of this show, Samantha Markle, joined me to beg the shameless Sussexes to just do the right thing.
When you have rogue children, you know, you love them, you want them to do the right thing, and you're always extending the olive branch. But that doesn't mean they don't have to be accountable. So what that special left out was, yes, you would love to be able to speak to her and make things better. He's not responsible solely for fixing it. I think the burden is on her, the burden is on Harry, to make things right with the royal family, with our family.
Lady C, I couldn't agree any more with Sam, but the reality is this is such a sad situation. 2 families ripped apart by Harry and Meghan now, and yet again, it's disrupting official royal plans.
Yes, but you know, let's reconfigure that, Dan. It's Meghan and Harry. Harry is following in Meghan's wake. Meghan is a very destructive and divisive and malevolent personality, and she exhibited signs of this even as a little girl and as a teenager. So it's much more exaggerated now, but I mean, look at some of that footage and just look at her sour expressions. You know, she has done her utmost to boost herself at the expense of everybody to whom she owes loyalty and gratitude.
Well, indeed, but Phil Dampier, you can't blame the Markle family here. They are devastated. They have a right to speak. I think the person you can blame is Meghan for allowing it to get to this point where yet again it's overshadowing a royal event.
Yeah, good evening, Dan. I mean, you'd have to have a heart of stone, wouldn't you, not to sort of be moved by that sequence of Thomas Markle there. I mean, it really is a cry from the heart. I mean, he's almost sort of metaphorically getting down on his knees and begging, isn't he, and saying, you know, please, how can we fix this? And it's just falling on deaf ears, and it's very, very sad. I mean, I think the King has shown the way. I mean, he's shown kindness, he's shown compassion, he's shown forgiveness. And it'd be nice to see that from Harry and Meghan, but it just doesn't look like we're going to get it. And, you know, I can't imagine how they're going to feel if something happens to him, if he does sadly die or gets more seriously ill and they haven't made it up to him. But that's just something they're going to have to live with, I'm afraid.
Now, over in the States, the Duke of Delusion could soon become the Duke of Deportation as a leading think tank prepares to take the Biden administration to court for Prince Harry's immigration record. So this is a new legal action launched overnight by the Heritage Foundation. They're demanding to know why he's been allowed to remain in America since publicly admitting a long list of drug abuses in his memoir, Spare. And with immigration one of the hot political topics ahead of next year's presidential election, Lady C, could Biden be forced to make an example of the druggy Duke?
Well, I hate to say I'm very cynical and I think I'm very realistic. I think there's no way Biden is ever going to make an example of Harry. Biden will bend over backwards because remember, Harry and Meghan are supporters of Biden. And Biden has shown time and again that he has no compunction of functioning outside of the law when it suits him. So I really think we would be very optimistic to expect Biden to enforce the law. Remember also, in America especially, there's one law for the rich and another law for everybody else.
And Phil Dampier, certainly it doesn't seem like Prince Harry has any nervousness about travelling to and from the country. Indeed, he's only going to be here, we hear, for less than 24 hours on Saturday. I'm going to be very interested, Phil, to see if the eco-hypocrite flies in a private jet to the coronation, by the way, because that would be completely outrageous, wouldn't it, given he doesn't want us mere mortals to use any carbon-guzzling planes?
Well, I'm told, Dan, that even now, if anyone discovers his plans for how he's actually going to fly, and he might still not come.
Really?
You know, I'd quite like some papers to publish them and solve us all a problem. But
so sorry, Phil. Can I just clarify that, because there have been rumours earlier in the week that Buckingham Palace are very concerned that Prince Harry might not turn up. So just to be very clear, what you're hearing is that if there's any form of security breach, if anyone reveals exactly how Harry will travel to the coronation and when he'll arrive, you're being told he might just not show up to his own father's coronation?
He's still paranoid, and you know, we know he's suing the Home Office over security. We know about this incident this evening. He is paranoid about security and also about the press finding out things. And I'm told that if anyone publishes the way he's actually going to get here, be it a private jet or maybe he's not coming private jet, I don't know. But if anyone publishes his plans, he might even not come. So you know, that's the sort of knife edge we're on. But I tend to agree.
Lady C, he just wants to cause drama all the time, doesn't he? All the time. He can't even just show up to the coronation and shut up. He wants to cause stress and trouble for the royal family all the time.
But he's always been like that. He's always been a drama queen. And he's married to somebody who's an even more histrionic drama queen than he is. But, you know, I actually am going to reveal how Harry is getting her. He's borrowing Meghan's broomstick.
Oh, ladies, see? Oh, you are a card. You are a card. Lady Colin Campbell and Phil Damper. And guess what? Both of my royal masterminds live with me Thursday night at Buckingham Palace as we count down to the coronation. So I'll see you both there. But coming up, motorists have finally lost all patience with Just Stop Oil's deranged roadblock protest, with one having their foot run over after standing in the middle of the road. Now, I warned those eco-extremists that eventually someone would end up getting hurt. We'll show you that dramatic footage soon. But next, as a bombshell poll exposes the Sussex's plummeting popularity, is King Charles is better off without the toxic couple. Maybe it's a good thing if Harry doesn't bother to get on that flight. Superstar US journalist Megyn Kelly, she's back with me straight after this.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Hello, I'm Calvin Robinson. Do not miss my Common Sense Crusade Saturdays at 7 p.m. Join me for some in-depth discussions on faith. Is that not the start of the slippery slope?
It's very much so.
And the big moral questions of the day. I'm baffled.
You've got some nerve.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's Megyn Kelly time now, and Meghan Markle's desperate bid to rehabilitate her image in the wake of her outrageous behaviour towards the royals seems to be failing spectacularly. A damning new royal family popularity poll puts the Duchess of Sussex at a lowly 18%, beaten only by the disgraced Prince Andrew on 7%, as the least liked member of the firm. Her ginger-winger husband, Prince Harry, is the third most disliked royal, with just a 22% favourability rating among Brits, according to a major news study by former Conservative Deputy Chairman Lord Ashcroft for the Daily Mail. Now, crucially, only a third of the population believe Meghan and Harry's raft of accusations against the royal family. But this comes as the Duchess of Delusion makes a miraculous reappearance in recent weeks after a disappearing act that lasted months. Her sudden return with a brand new makeover, a weird kiss cam stunt at the basketball and a new deal with top Hollywood talent agency all came rushing in just days before Charles's coronation. So Megyn Kelly, with the toxic Sussexes totally sliding in the popularity stakes despite this attempt by Meghan to insert herself into the coronation conversation because she's clearly so jealous that she's not coming. Actually, do you reckon the king is just better off without these two?
Oh, 100%. I mean, very clearly in the UK, the people cannot stand them, especially her. I mean, 18% approval? I think even the US Congress has a higher approval rating, and they're beneath the cockroach. I mean, it's really dreadful. And what I've realized over this past, I don't know how long we've been covering them, but let's just say year, but it's emphasized by what's happened in the past week, is they are dumb. My God, they're dumb. I'm sorry. But what happened? Their approval ratings, at least here in the United States, were holding on as of December prior to their publicity tour. Like they were hanging in there in the United States, not the UK. And what did they do? They went on their huge media tour and they did their Netflix thing and they did Spare and then whatever. And they went off a cliff, even here in the United States, where everybody said, we don't want anything to do with them. And then over the past 2 months, their approval ratings have eked up just a tiny bit. The latest Newsweek poll shows she went up 5 points, he went up 7 points. Still only 33% of Americans like her. Only 39% like him. I mean, she's still down at 1/3 liking her and 2/3 can't stand her in America, all right? But why did they go up those little bits over the past couple months? Because they kept their mouths shut. Because they went away. What does that tell you? People can't stand them. And every time they remind us that they exist and, of course, continue to need our nonstop attention, the approval numbers go back down because people are reminded that they exist and how little they actually want to hear from them. And so her latest attempt to put herself back out there is just going to backfire once again. She's going to go back down. She's going to lose the 5 points she just won. And not only because she stuck her head up again, but for the reasons you just stated. It's an obvious attempt to get attention. Anybody with a child or 2 toddlers understands how this works. You pay attention to the one toddler and the other toddler starts doing things to get your attention. They come over, they'll try to get it by being sweet. If you don't give it to them by being sweet, then they'll start throwing things. They'll do whatever is necessary to get your eyes on them. That's her. The other reason it's not going to work is because she's so clueless, Dan, about what makes people like you. Maybe it will like them if I put out myself looking as glamorous as I possibly can with my new chiseled, enhanced work with all the right lighting on me. Hello, bitches, I'm back. Okay, maybe that'll work. If it doesn't work, maybe I'll tell everybody that I'm now represented by Ari Emanuel, the meanest person in Hollywood, at WME. So I'm going back to the spotlight where I've always belonged. Perhaps you weren't aware. No, that's not going to make anybody like you or feel relatable with you. And then I'll just happen to be caught at the basketball game on the kiss cam. And oh no, honey, oh, everything's an act. She never has one genuine moment, and we can smell it now from a mile away. So she's right not to go. We didn't need to see that at the coronation. Much as I would have enjoyed the boos, I will still be booing him from my house. I would have liked to see her get booed, but she's smart enough to realize that would have happened there. But there's no saving it. If they resurface, their numbers go down. The only way to make them go back up is to go back into the quiet, private life they lied about actually wanting.
I mean, the thing is, Megyn, I think she's the perfect example of what happens when you surround yourself by yes men and women. Because can you imagine her hapless team members, they only last for 5 minutes because she ends up getting rid of them all the moment that they question one of her decisions. When Megyn said, oh, do you know what? I've disappeared for 4 months, but I just want to announce all of these things a week before the coronation. Like, just shut up. You only had to wait for 2 more weeks, and then you can do all of your pathetic Hollywood announcements. It's just gross. It's grim. We can see through it. I think it makes her less popular, but I am annoyed by it. I am, because we can't just ignore her as much as we might want to, because she does cause damage.
Here's the irony. Why does she want to stick it to the royal family? What has the royal family done to her again? Oh, They're the entire reason she's getting representation by WME, which I'm sure wanted nothing to do with her when she was a no-name Deal or No Deal girl. Never mind her stupid series Suits. She could never have gotten Ari Emanuel to represent her. Trust me. So the only reason they're interested in Meghan Markle and repping her because
the
they think that
global
she can get
icon Meghan Markle, which is how they described her.
Okay. I mean, she's been busy writing her own press releases. The only reason they want her is because of the royal family, who she hates, right? So she's got to stick it to the royal family. Why again? Because they made her rich and they made her a huge star, but she's really angry about it. Why? Because she wasn't able to be in the #1 spot because she married the spare instead of the heir. Well, you should have done some homework on that. By the way, it's not for nothing, Dan, but I have it on very good authority now that she had a whole vision board of her life with the royal family and of the royal family themselves and Prince Harry when she was married to husband #1. Happened to have a good source on that. That's the woman, the global icon.
So she planned this all along. That's what it comes down to. Well, fascinating insight. So good to have you back, Meghan Kelly. By the way, congratulations, Meghan. Now over 1 million subscribers for your brilliant Meghan Kelly show on
And a lot
YouTube.
of folks from the UK.
Yeah, indeed, and I really recommend it. I fell asleep to it last night, but actually you kept me awake. That's how good you were. It was about 3 a.m. Also as a podcast and on Sirius XM too. Meghan, thank you so much. But coming up later, after her husband was banished from the Conservatives for defending the COVID injured, Nevin Abridgen, who is planning to unleash a tell-all book about the sleaze of Westminster, joins me live to hit back at what she calls the political persecution of her family. But next, as Princess Anne criticises the King's vision of a slimmed-down monarchy, as well as slamming the idea of reparations, saying that she is more realistic about history, should the monarch take counsel from his anti-woke sister and make her a key advisor? My superstar panel return to debate that. Plus, we've got a first look at tomorrow's newspaper front pages, hot off the press. We're back in just 2 minutes' time.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now? Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better.
Crop failures, famine, war, suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
We are putting the cart before the horse. As Charles I said at the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Here on GB News, we're starting the conversation and having the debate that the establishment won't have. No one will be cancelled. Join me at 4 p.m. every Saturday and Sunday. We'll be discussing all the big topics of the weekend.
Oh, get cracking!
Always honest, always fun. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's 10 p.m. I'm Dan Wootton, and breaking tonight, a major security incident unfolded at Buckingham Palace this evening after police arrested a man for throwing suspected shotgun cartridges into palace grounds just 4 days before the King's coronation. Shocked eyewitnesses reported hearing what could be described as a controlled explosion soon after the world's media, including GB News, we were broadcasting live from the palace ahead of the coronation, were evacuated from the press units outside. This is the moment our very own Jacob Rees-Mogg was forced off air by police.
So I'm very sorry to say that it is good evening for me for the time being, as I think that was probably a controlled explosion in the background. That's what it sounded like to me. We will no doubt find out later.
Super calm, Jacob. But the Met Police, the good news is, have told our Home and Security editor that the incident is not being treated as terror-related, and the King and Queen Consort were reportedly not in residence at the palace during the incident. So we'll have more on this developing story shortly. Also on the way, Meghan Markle has suddenly emerged from her Montecito mansion, appearing in a series of very obvious headline-grabbing stunts in the week leading up to the King's coronation. Coincidence? Or a shameful and desperate attempt to steal attention away from her father-in-law's big moment? Well, in uncancelled, Meghan and Charles's biographer Tom Bower offers his frank verdict on the disturbing prospect of a Sussex sideshow. Plus, Princess Anne has broken the curse of disastrous royal interviews as she launched a fabulous assault on lockdown fanatics, the fantasy of a slimmed-down monarchy, and the madness of reparations for historic slavery.
And the modern contexts are very different. Slavery hasn't gone away. No, come on.
Come on, indeed. So does the King need to block out the woke rabble-rousers from The Guardian and promote his younger sister to become his chief advisor? That's how we debate with my superstar panel next. Tonight, I'm joined by Queen Amanda Patel, Calvin Robinson and Rebecca Reid. Also on the way, after Andrew Bridgen is expelled from the Tory party for speaking out about vaccine harms, his biggest supporter and wife, Nevena Bridgen, is preparing to unleash a bombshell book titled Confessions of a Westminster Wife, where she will lift the lid on Conservative politicians who she says wish to silence her. So what does Nevena know about the no that the Tories are just so scared of? Well, she'll join me live for an exclusive interview shortly. Also, Just Stop Oil has put their foot in it one too many times.
You're
right.
It's gone over a foot.
Are you okay?
It's gone over a foot.
But as the climate extremists play the victim card, do they need to accept the dangerous consequences for their campaign of eco-terrorism? And with the SNP Myrdon scandal and fronted by Humza Yousaf, do the opposition parties in Scotland have a golden opportunity, and actually I would say a duty, to break the separatist stranglehold in Holyrood? We'll discuss that in tonight's Greatest Britain and Media and Union Jackass 2. Plus, first front pages are going to arrive in mere moments right after the headlines with Polly Middlehurst.
Dan, thanks very much indeed. Well, our top story tonight, a man has been arrested on suspicion of an offensive weapon near the gates of Buckingham Palace after throwing suspected shotgun cartridges into the grounds of the palace. The Met Police says the items have since been recovered and will be taken away for specialist examination. They're also saying they're not treating the matter as terror-related. A knife was found when the suspect was searched, and police had to be evacuated from the grounds before a controlled explosion was carried out. No reports of any shots fired or injuries. The King and Queen Consort were not believed to be at the palace at the time. In other news tonight, more than 1 million NHS staff in England will receive a 5% pay rise. Health unions representing the majority of NHS workers have recommended that a revised pay offer made by the government should be implemented. Members of the NHS Staff Council said that unions agreed to the deal for staff, which includes all NHS workers apart from doctors, dentists and senior managers. The Royal College of Nursing and Unite, however, voted against the pay deal. The Health Secretary, Steve Barclay, says the government will implement the pay rise for NHS workers and is urging the remaining unions to accept the deal.
It's a good day for NHS staff, but it's also a good day for patients. It will allow us to move forward. Now the NHS Staff Council has ratified this deal. It's been accepted by the majority of the NHS Staff Council, and we can now move forward, focus together on the patients, and also ensure that staff get the pay rise much sooner than would have been the case under the pay review body process.
However, the Shadow Chancellor Rachel Reeves says the issue still isn't resolved.
Well, what this shows is that this whole load of industrial action was absolutely avoidable if the government had have done what Labour said should have happened months ago, and that is get round the table and negotiate. But it is also a sign of how angry nurses and indeed junior doctors are with this government, that the threat of industrial action continues even after today.
Well, in other breaking news tonight, the Partygate investigator Sue Gray has declined to speak to an inquiry surrounding discussions with the Labour Party about a senior role. The Deputy Prime Minister says the probe into her planned switch from Whitehall to become Sir Keir Starmer's Chief of Staff has been paused while the next steps are being considered. Oliver Dowden said it was up to the anti-corruption watchdog to recommend how long to delay the former senior official's start date with Labour. Labour insisted that Ms Gray has fully cooperated. Now, a nurse accused of murdering 7 babies and attempting to kill 10 others says her whole world stopped when she was blamed for their deaths. 33-year-old Lucy Letby is on trial at Manchester Crown Court for the offences alleged to have taken place between 2015 and 2016. And giving evidence for the first time, Letby said she thought of killing herself because of the allegations. The prosecution, however, called Letby a constant malevolent presence at the neonatal unit of the Countess of Chester Hospital. She denies all the charges. Now, Wrexham Football Club have kicked off a special victory parade to celebrate being promoted into the English Football League. Take a look. Those were the sights and sounds earlier on this evening as thousands of fans lined the streets alongside the owners Ryan Reynolds and Rob McElhenney as the club marked its return after 15 years in the wilderness. They won the league with 111 points, a record for the top 5 divisions of football. They're the 3rd oldest professional football team in the world. You're up to date on TV, online, DAB+ radio and on the TuneIn app. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Tomorrow's news tonight now in our media buzz, so let's kick off with a very first look at the front pages hot off the press. And the Metro leads with killer nurse weeps in court as Lucy Letby wiped away tears in the witness box, saying she was sickened to be blamed for the deaths of babies in her neonatal unit. Sue Gray refuses to cooperate into the inquiry into her Labour role. That's the lead on The Independent. It was also the lead in My Digest tonight. The Cabinet Office inquiry into the departure of the top civil servant to become Slippery Starmer's Chief of Staff, allegedly agreed when she was investigating Boris Johnson and Partygate, has been paused after, and I still can't believe I'm saying this, she took a vow of silence and refused to speak. Absolutely unbelievable. Of course, we may expect some of the later editions of the newspapers to include the developing situation at Buckingham Palace, which we have been covering live here on GB News since 8 o'clock, and we will have an update on that very shortly, so do stay tuned. But before that, my superstar panel back with me, Daily Mail Queen Amanda Patel, the Conservative commentator, the Reverend Calvin Robinson, and the author and journalist Rebecca Reid. Now, bombshell royal interviews have a habit of going very badly, right? From the career-ending car crash between Prince Andrew and the untrustworthy Emily Maitlis, to the Sussexes launching a tissue of lies in their cosy sit-down alongside Oprah. But bucking the trend last night was Princess Anne, as she proved just how big an asset she is to the British monarchy. In a rare and in-depth chat with the Canadian network CBC, the Princess Royal fired back at the Hard Left's campaign for the royal family to pay slavery reparations, and she criticised, and my goodness, I love this, growing talk of a future slimmed-down monarchy. So take that, Charles, look.
A historical perspective, which is slightly different, maybe more realistic.
And which is?
No, the historical perspective, it just goes back a lot further. Mm-hmm. And the modern contexts are very different. Slavery hasn't gone away. Mm-hmm. No, come on. Mm-hmm. Don't be too focused on time scales and periods. History isn't like that. Well, I think the slim down was said in a day when there were a few more people around to make that seem like a justifiable comment.
The world changes a bit.
It changes a bit. I mean, it doesn't sound like a good idea from where I'm standing, I have to say.
Sure it does
I'm not quite sure what else, we can do.
Now, the Princess Royal's anti-woke views seem to be at odds with her older brother, but after that exhibition from Anne, Calvin Robinson, isn't it about time that Charles actually recognises what he's got in the family? I think Anne, seriously, and I really mean this, should become the chief advisor to the new king.
Oh, I'd love her to be queen. She's amazing, isn't she? This is why she's everyone's favourite royal.
She can't just become
I know.
We'd have to kill a whole load of people.
It's not just about putting a crown on to become a queen.
We know that, don't we?
But the fact that she's making these statements publicly says perhaps she's not in his inner advisory circle as she should be. So he needs to be listening to her, because that's common sense, that's pragmatism, that's what we need from the royal family. That's how we modernise it, not by doing this woke nonsense of reparations and slimming down. Listen to Princess Anne.
Well, I thought what was particularly brave, and I really do mean that, because when you talk about this issue, you know you're going to have the woke mob coming for you, is that when she totally contextualised the issue of historic slavery, Amanda Patel, and she made the very important point, it's still going on today.
See, that's the thing that was overlooked in the original headlines, just saying she's at odds with Charles because she doesn't think that we should be looking back. That was a really pertinent point, because we know modern slavery is a huge problem around the world.
And I thought that utopians talk a bit more about that.
Well,
we talk about it all the time.
Yeah,
and we don't want to leave the ECHR.
Bring it back to stopping the boats as ever.
But look, she was brilliant on slavery, nuanced and not woke. I thought that, talking about the slimline monarchy, what she's basically saying is, I'm the hardest working royal here. I can't work anymore. You can't slim us down anymore. I thought she was brilliant.
Also, she's got a sense of humour. She wears it so lightly.
I know.
The reason she's so likeable, and she is everyone's favourite, I think, is because she jokingly is saying, there are people on Twitter making the joke like, oh, well, of course she doesn't want to slim down monarchy, she'd lose her job. That's what she's saying. That was her joke. She was like, obviously, from my point of view, I don't want that. She is funny.
But I think she's also saying, I couldn't work any more than I do already.
Yeah, and also she also makes reference to not being able to get another job, which is, again, very funny and very
She's
apt.
her mother's daughter. But look, in another part of the interview that I really wanted to show you...
Yeah, more her father's, if anything.
Anne spoke about the toll lockdown had on the elderly. I found this really emotional, actually, notably speaking for the first time about the impact of lockdown on Prince Philip in his final days. Watch this.
I suppose I tend to think it stole a bit from my father, who, lost a lot of the people who would have gone to see him and talk to him and, have those conversations that kept him interested. And he lost all of that. Online didn't do it for everybody.
I mean, I'm sorry to bring it up, but I think of that image of your mother, the Queen, by herself.
Yes,
in that
funeral.
moment. Yeah. That was a thievery.
Yeah, you're quite right. And then, in some ways, I'm glad we didn't see that at that moment. And then when you see the photograph, it's much worse somehow.
Calvin Robinson, as lockdown sceptics, I think we always knew that the royal family were not really on board with the hysteria. The Queen, the late Queen, for example, refused to wear the masks. But I found this so powerful to actually hear from Anne in an emotional context. This is thievery. Lockdown was thievery. It destroyed the final days of Prince Philip.
But more importantly than that, it makes it personal. That's why it's so powerful, because that story could have been any one of us, any one of our grandparents, but it's the royal family. So they're putting it out there. That's what the royal family is all about, right? It's to represent us. So they're putting it out there so no government should ever be able to take our civil liberties away from us ever again for anything like that.
Amanda Patel, I found that absolutely fascinating, actually, the fact that she didn't just toe the party line in terms of saying, oh, lockdown saved lots of lives. Actually, she spoke about the fact that it destroyed the lives of elderly people too.
But that's the great thing about Anne, is she speaks honestly. So many nuggets in that interview, which she would have thought about a great deal before she gave it. And that was like her message saying, never have a COVID lockdown again. We'll never do it. That was her message. And it's so profound coming from her.
Yeah.
Because less is more sometimes, Rebecca Reid.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think she was likely to come out and do the full GB News spiel about lockdowns.
Dan has not given up hope.
I'm not sure she was actually saying that lockdown stole from her. I think she was saying COVID stole from everybody. I think she was more neutral than to say she wasn't criticising a deliberate political decision.
No.
She was criticising the situation more broadly.
But that was what's so clever about it.
But however you feel about lockdowns, we can all agree that we all had time stolen from us.
But I think that's a rewriting of it, Calvin. Because,
I thought it was quite
she
clear.
never
The way it's
inserted
transcribed.
any of the usual caveats. Oh, but of course COVID was a huge danger and this was necessary.
It wasn't the cold or the flu that made her mother sit there by herself, lonely and isolated. It was the government's reaction to the cold or the flu. I think that was very clear.
All of the transcriptions of the interview, in the square bracket, it says COVID.
I haven't read the transcription. I just watched the footage.
I watched the entire interview.
But the official transcriptions say that she's referring to COVID.
Very clear that she was referring to...
That's revisionist.
It's not revisionist.
Very, very, very clear. It was great to see her like this, wasn't it, Amanda?
Look, we all kind of always had a kind of crush on Princess Anne. Just because she always seemed to be forthright. She sort of embodied her mother and her father. And in this, she is telling a lot of truths without being woke, without any special pleading, without, trying to... She's just so honest about really, really important issues that face us.
She's not trying, is she? She's not. Sometimes it feels like there's been a focus group and they're trying to hit the points.
No. It did not feel like that. It felt totally authentic, but she would have thought about that long and hard.
Now, look, for months, I've been warning that if the eco-terrorists at Just Stop Oil continue blocking the roads, eventually someone was going to get hurt. And today, the inevitable finally happened.
You're right.
It's gone over a foot.
Are you okay?
It's gone over a foot.
So following that, have the agitators reconsidered their dangerous and hostile tactics? No, of course not. They blamed anyone but themselves, hysterically writing online after weeks of inflammatory language from politicians and, oh yeah, wait for it, right-wing media personalities, wonder who they mean. A car has finally rammed into a peaceful protest. For God's sake, take some responsibility for brainwashing your supporters and hurling them into the middle of busy roads. Stop it before something terrible happens, because it will. Mark my words, if you continue to go and stand in the middle of busy roads, it's not the fault of commentators, it is the fault of you as an eco-terrorist. And it makes me very angry, because it might not just be them injured, it might be one of us injured.
Maybe the reason her foot got run over was because she'd glued it to the road.
Exactly. That's their other stunt, isn't it? That's their other shtick. Rebecca Reid, Gavin Robertson, Amanda Patel, do stand by, because coming up, we'll have the latest from Buckingham Palace after police arrested a man for throwing suspected shotgun cartridges into palace grounds just a day before the King's coronation. We broke the news live earlier as our team was dramatically evacuated from the media area, and we'll show the moment when Jacob Rees-Mogg was actually broadcasting as we heard the explosion coming from the palace. But next, as Meghan Markle launches 3 PR stunts ahead of this weekend's coronation, why is the popularity of the shameless Sussexes continuing to sink? Tom Bower will be on that very soon. But I can tell you after the break, Navina Bridgen is going to speak out live.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed. So I guess they've always been quite woke. That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories.
Right, folks, that was a spicy one, wasn't it?
With us four, plus a special guest.
Sometimes she has to stick her foot in it. Sometimes she has to say things as they are.
Sometimes I think we should keep the refugees and send the pensioners to Rwanda. Then we'd be in a much better state.
Well, Benjamin, that is...
The Saturday 5. Saturday nights from 8.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Sunday from 11. Join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Forensic royal analysis with Tom Bower coming up imminently. But first, the Tories are bracing themselves for the publication of an exposé into the behind-the-scenes drama within our ruling party. It will come courtesy of Nevena Bridgen, the fuming wife of expelled Tory MP Andrew Bridgen, who is embarking on a fierce defence of her husband in the wake of his COVID vaccine furore. After Andrew was controversially booted from the party last week, Nevena released a sensational statement that read in part, "Finally, I can talk about the censorship, abuse and racism I've experienced firsthand as a political wife in the past 6 years in Westminster." The professional star opera singer and writer of the Wives of Westminster blog twisted the knife further by promising a damning tell-all book more dramatic than the storylines she performs on stage. She wrote, "For 6 years, I was placed on the silence button, but enough is enough. Buckle up for the confessions of the Westminster wife." So as she prepares to unleash her bombshell book, which we've mocked up here, and with Westminster braced for what she could reveal, Nevena joins me now to disclose all in loyal defence of her husband, Andrew Bridgen. So, Nevena Bridgen, this is your first interview. What are you referring to about what's gone on behind the scenes in the Conservative Party?
Sorry, can you come again? I didn't hear.
Do we have your sound, Nevena? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
I can't hear Nevena. Can we just check that we're getting Nevena's sound? Nevena, sorry, we'll try that again. What are you planning to disclose about what's been going on behind the scenes in the Conservative Party?
Well, then, hello, if you can hear me now. I'm planning to finally speak. You know, I have now freedom to speak and reveal everything that was going on for the 6 years being behind the stage of political life in Westminster, from basically first visit to Chequers under Theresa May and my official initiation into political life behind the scenes. And let's say initiation to so-called Conservative Club, you know, through ups and downs, you know, 3.5 prime ministers, about how they made me feel as a second-class citizen, numerous of instances of.
And so how did they make you feel like a second-class citizen, Nevna? Is this what you were referring to when you referenced racism?
Yes, racism and also, anti-immigrant comments, trying to censor me, coming to my husband and saying, quote, put your wife on the leash, with a clear message that if I'm not tamed, that, there will be clear consequences, and many other, scandals and experience, very unique perspective I have. I've been in many places and many rooms that journalists couldn't be. So, I'm finally free to speak. And I don't, listen, I'm not going to hold back. I'm going to tell how it was, how it is, how I see it, how I experienced it. And, they can like it or not, but I'll tell my truth. And also including what you're experiencing now, and political persecution that is happening with the expulsion of my husband from the party.
So he has been expelled because he made a comment which compared vaccine injuries to, well, the argument was that he compared it to the Holocaust. He didn't actually compare it to the Holocaust, did he? He said it was the worst scandal since the Holocaust. However, this has offended a lot of people. Do you feel like there is an attempt to shut down people within the Conservative Party who are speaking up on the issue of vaccine harms?
Listen, first let me tell you about this. It was a quote of an Israeli professor, and it wasn't, as you said, it wasn't comparison. It was basically a reference point. And we can argue that it was insensitive maybe, and he did apologize if he offended someone. But if my husband was an anti-Semite, he would never been afterwards invited to a Westminster synagogue to speak to the Jewish community. So that's first. But that was basically instrument to go against him and to assassin his character.
So if you speak...
as for the vaccines, that's not my topic. If you want to speak about that, I'm not an expert and I'm not going to get into details of that. If you want to speak about that, you can call him. He knows a lot, or he can put you in the touch with doctors that are talking, or people who've been harmed. But there is a fact there, and that I'm experiencing is that when you voice these issues, that you're going to be definitely cancelled, and this is, in the end, it's not just Andrew Bridgen or our family that's been affected. It's basically a fight for freedom of speech. As an elected politician, your job and responsibility is to stand and raise the issues that your people are coming forward with. He is doing his job. You can like it or not, you can debate it, but you cannot go into political persecution and use the instruments, autocrats' instruments, basically.
No, we have to be able to have the debate. Absolutely. And we've been having the debate on vaccine harms on this show for long before anyone in the mainstream media or the Conservative Party, to be frank, was talking about it. Who treated you so badly, Nevna? You seem like an absolutely lovely woman. Do you want to name any of the politicians who treated you badly?
I'm not going to reveal the details in this instance because you will need to wait until my book comes out.
But are you talking cabinet ministers? Are you talking prime ministers?
I'm talking very high-profile politicians, in Conservative Party, many of them, women and men.
So would you say that Conservative politicians should be nervous about your book? You're going to be prepared to reveal stories that may be uncomfortable?
They can be whatever they want, frankly, to tell you. I'm not bothered about that. I'm more into revealing, those big moral giants, that people are voting for, that they have right to know who are they and how they treat people around and how they pretend in a public eye when there is a campaign going on and when we need to vote, this is all happening, this persecution and this silencing down, and, this is all happening under under Rishi Sunak's regime, 2023 Britain. This is not some country. This is vast. This is democratic system apparently. But what we're experiencing as a family is not a democracy because my husband didn't have right to speak, to defend himself, and basically they stopped his appeal by leaking the information to the press, and that's with the aim to completely dehumanize him, to kill his dignity. To ruin his dignity, ruin his credibility, and ruin our family. Because when you take topics like anti-Semitism, which is very easy to use against someone, when you take weaponize the mental health issues and you label him with delusional, whatever, on national television without a chance to reply, then this is the father of my child who will, be grown enough to read this. And he has also 2 other children who are grown enough now to understand this and going through all of this. This is really bad what they're doing. And this is autocratic regime as it is. These instruments are very well known in autocratic regimes. I grew up in one, so I can tell you that this is.
Well, Nevena, with me, freedom of speech is everything. It's central to everything that I do.
It's everything.
And even though personally,
if they can, sorry, because I think the sound is
you make the point.
If they can do this to their own after 20 years of being loyal, working, giving life to them. My child didn't have a father because he was campaigning for other people. So if helping other people, so. He was always there for everyone.
Okay.
If they can do that to their own, what they can do to the citizens of this country, and people need to know, they need to wake up and fight for their right to speak, because if every religion is cancelled, all the people are cancelled.
Just finally, quickly, because a lot of people want to know where you're going politically. Is it true that your husband and you are going to join Lawrence Fox's Reclaim Party? Can you confirm that?
I cannot confirm anything. He is now at the moment independent MP, and it's up to him what is going to be next choice.
Well, do keep us posted, because I'm very excited to learn about your book. I don't think people at Parliament have been so scared about a book since Sasha Swire, and remember she had her diaries. That's how we've mocked it up. You can take that for free. Nevena Bridgen, blogger,
thank you so much.
Wife to Andrew Bridgen MP. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
But coming up in Uncancelled, as Meghan Markle launches a fresh PR campaign ahead of the coronation, and the row over the Pledge of Allegiance to King Charles intensifies. There's plenty for top royal biographer Tom Bauer to get stuck into. He's live in the studio very soon. But next in the Media Buzz, we'll have the latest from this dramatic situation at Buckingham Palace tonight after police arrested a man for throwing suspected shotgun cartridges into palace grounds. He also is believed to have had suspicious packages on him. This is just 4 days, of course, before the coronation. We'll show you footage of the moment Jacob Rees-Mogg was broadcasting live as some form of potentially controlled explosion took place straight after this.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference. And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better.
Crop failures, famine, war, suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
We are putting the cart before the horse. As Charles I said at the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories. Right, folks, that was a spicy one, wasn't it?
With us four, plus a special guest. Sometimes she has to stick her foot in it. Sometimes she has to say things as they are.
Sometimes I think we should keep the refugees and send the pensioners to Rwanda. Then we'd be in a much better state.
Well, Benjamin, that is
The Saturday 5. Saturday nights from 8. Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Let's return to tomorrow's news tonight now, and more front pages have just been delivered. The Eye is leading with Sue Gray's refusal to speak to officials investigating claims she breached civil service rules over becoming Labour's Chief of Staff. A completely outrageous breaking story from Westminster tonight. The Guardian reports that new anti-protest powers have been rushed into law in time for this weekend's coronation. Official warning letters have been sent to anti-monarchists planning protests at the event, saying they're at risk of arrest for stunts such as blocking roads. And the Daily Mail leads on the drama at Buckingham Palace earlier this evening with a man arrested after shotgun cartridges were thrown over palace grounds. And we're going to have more on this now with tonight's superstar panel. Top Daily Mail columnist Amanda Patel, the Conservative commentator, the Reverend Calvin Robinson, and the author and journalist Rebecca Reid. Now, we were actually on air tonight breaking the news first that there was this dramatic security incident at Buckingham Palace. It took place live during Jacob Rees-Mogg's State of the Nation on GB News. A man was arrested at around 7 p.m. for throwing suspected shotgun cartridges into palace grounds and possessing a weapon as coronation rehearsals took place. What we believe to be a controlled explosion then rocked the area just days before the King's coronation this weekend. So it saw Jacob and his GB News production team frantically evacuated by police from their media zone outside the front of the palace as cops scrambled to secure the area. As Jacob was temporarily pulled off air, I've rushed into the studio an hour before my own show to cover the developing story. Tonight, this is Dan Wootton. Obviously, you would usually be turning in for Jacob Rees-Mogg at this time, but breaking tonight, security sources have told GB News that there has been an incident inside Buckingham Palace grounds and the media area where we have been broadcasting from all day and where international crews are preparing for the King's coronation have now been evacuated. This was the extraordinary moment our viewers heard first, the extremely loud explosion live, as I interviewed Jacob and his guest Michael Cole from a caravan on the scene.
So I'm very sorry to say that it is good evening for me for the time being, as I think that was probably a controlled explosion in the background. That's what it sounded like to me. We will no doubt find out later. But I assume it's happening.
It's reported the arrested man was also found to be in possession of a suspicious bag, and the explosion was the cops blowing up said bag as a precaution. A knife was also recovered on the man. Now, it turns out, even though the Royal Standard was flying, the King and the Queen were not there. They were likely just down the Mall at Clarence House, and the incident not being treated as terror-related. This is how The Sun is covering it tonight. I've just got that front page in Palace Shotgun Terror. So, Amanda Patel, this certainly begs the question as to whether there needs to be even more security ahead of the coronation, because no matter what is said about how much is in place, at the end of the day, this man was still able to lob shotgun cartridges into the grounds of Buckingham Palace with the King just down the road.
Before I address that, Dan, may I just say, as a news person and journalist, the GB team has done a brilliant job.
Oh, thank you.
Covering a running story like this when you don't know what the hell's going on. All tribute to.
And wasn't it brilliant how calm Jacob Rees-Mogg and Michael Cole were?
Wasn't the most shocking bit that Jacob Rees-Mogg was in a caravan?
Well, look, that's what happens. That's real news.
Yeah.
And it's been brilliant. There is no doubt that every scintilla of security will be all over the coronation. But this just gives you an example of how some person with some shotgun cartridges chucked them over, and somehow so he chucked them in, and his bag was remotely exploded. It's just a huge warning sign, and it fills us with a little bit of fear for the coronation. But all it will do is step up the security forces' efforts.
Well, Calvin Robinson, look, I do actually want to give a shout out to our security forces tonight because they have received over the past few months constant negative publicity. Sure, a lot of it is probably completely deserved. But sometimes I think we forget how high the stakes are during an event like this. We read all the stories, but people actually don't believe how many incidents are scuppered and how much the police have to deal with.
That's why it's important to have a police force, isn't it?
Yeah.
I'm not necessarily sure that's true.
I don't think the security needs to be ramped up. I think what we saw today is that the security works. And we're not like America. We don't just cordon off the entire area. We're understated. I was down on the Mall earlier today, actually, moments before that. Bumped into Peter Tatchell, of all people. But the fact that you can still walk up the Mall, you can still reach the palace, that's a very British thing because we're a part of it. It's a part of us. And I think it's important that it remains open. The last thing I'd like to see is like what we have on Downing Street, where you can no longer walk down there.
No, but the surveillance it's it's secret, it's hidden. And that's what
of course. As I say, it's understated. But the last thing we want to do is go over the top.
I think Calvin makes a really good point. I find it incredibly sad how far away we have to stay from Downing Street. But of course, after the IRA activity in the 80s and 90s, that became an inevitability. Is the risk here, as Calvin suggests, that actually maybe if incidents like this continue, we will be kept further away from royal palaces?
I think the problem with that is that in order for the royals to survive, we need to feel like they sort of exist in the same sphere as us. And also, then usually not precious. That's why we like the Princess Anne interview, because they're not babies about it. And I think one of the things people don't like about Harry and Meghan is they're kind of up in the ivory tower. And I think that would be a real mistake. Also, it's incredibly rare. But generally speaking, people don't behave like this.
No.
We don't need to throw the baby out with the bathwater.
So you wouldn't feel nervous to attend the festivities in London over the course of the coronation after what you've seen tonight?
I mean, it's not really my natural métier to go and do that. But if I wanted to, I would still go. And I think it's really important.
Calvin and Amanda, you too?
Oh, I'm going to go down. Yeah, absolutely.
I would definitely go down, but I ain't going to make that vow.
But that's Londoners, isn't it?
I ain't going to make
You're not going to make the vow?
Are you not?
Calvin, are you going to make the Pledge of Allegiance?
I'll pledge my allegiance to the king and country, not to particular individuals.
Not the heirs and successors.
Why not? I like joining in things.
Goodness me! Rebecca Reed, the lefty,
I love
Pledge of Allegiance.
I love
the monarchy. Are going to do it in front of their telly with a few cans of beer.
I will not be watching it, so I probably won't actually end up doing it. But if I were watching it, I would join it.
Rebecca Reed, Calvin Robinson, Amanda Patel. If you are watching it, you've got to catch it here on GB News, of course. Now coming up with the SNP Myrdon scandal and fronted by Humza Eustace. Do the opposition parties in Scotland have a golden opportunity and duty to break the separatist stranglehold in Holyrood? We're going to discuss that as we reveal tonight's greatest Britain and Union jackass. But next in Uncancelled, is Meghan Markle's PR push just an attempt to steal attention away from the coronation she chose to snub? And will you be taking the Pledge of Allegiance? Celebrated royal biographer Tom Bower joins me live in the studio next. We're back in just 2 minutes' time.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank. My father didn't love me. So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's time for Uncancelled. And this is where Britain's top commentators speak out on controversial issues without the fear of the cancel culture sweeping the rest of the media. Now, with the countdown to the coronation very much on, King Charles is facing controversy and drama from all angles. So Buckingham Palace is engaged in conflict with the Archbishop of Canterbury over the controversial Pledge of Allegiance, while traditionalists are concerned about the stripping of ancient practices in favour of a more woke ceremony on Saturday. Then, of course, there are the oh-so-predictable publicity stunts from the Duke and Duchess of Delusion, which threaten to steal the limelight from the official proceedings. Now, no man knows more about all of this than the esteemed royal biographer of both King Charles and Meghan Markle, Tom Bauer, who joins me live now in the studio. So, Tom, look, we did expect a publicity stunt from Meghan. You actually predicted it. But were you surprised at just how planned it was? You know, 3 big moments after 4 months out of the spotlight, 2 days apart. There's no doubt that this is an engineered attempt to insert herself back into the story just ahead of the coronation.
And I think, Dan, I think there's more to come.
Really?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think she's the master of the unexpected to deliver, and it's all expected. So I'm sure that when Harry is here, or just before he arrives, something else will come out of California. And unfortunately, it'll overshadow what the coronation is meant to be about, and not meant to be about her.
And our own Phil Dampier, early in the show tonight, revealing news that Harry has threatened that if details of his flight to the UK are leaked, that he might actually stay at home because he's throwing his toys out the cot about security again.
Well, I've always suspected that he didn't want to come. I've always said on the programme I didn't think they would come at all. I didn't think he would come, and I think he's looking for an excuse not to come, because I think quite clearly he has been put back into the guest list area of the Abbey rather than at the front. And I suspect he'll look for an excuse until the very last moment not to come, and that'll be the stunt they'll pull. I mean, that is the great problem. If Charles had dealt with it properly weeks or months ago, we wouldn't be hanging on whether the Meghan and Harry are coming or not. But unfortunately, he's played into their hands on this.
But it is so shameless and shameful that they yet again want to make this event all about them, Tom.
Well, but that's the problem. That was been faced ever since the Sandringham Summit, nearly 3 years ago now. I mean, it is all about them. And unfortunately, because King Charles has not been firm, they're getting their own agenda.
Well, indeed. Indeed, which you've been very clear on. Now, this growing row between Buckingham Palace and the Archbishop of Canterbury and Lambeth Palace over the Pledge of Allegiance, which seems to have annoyed a lot of people, Tom, because it's not just a pledge of allegiance to King Charles, is it? It's the heirs and successors too, and of course that includes Andrew and Harry. Who do you blame, and why do you think this has ended up a bit of a PR disaster so soon before the coronation?
Well, because I blame entirely the Archbishop in the sense that he is really an extraordinary man who has no sense of reality and keeps on, always that image of him prostrating himself on a tombstone and always protesting about the most ridiculous things. And the palace should have controlled him, but unfortunately they don't control him in a way which was necessary. And I think this oath of allegiance, the idea of sitting at home watching the coronation and then reciting off some ridiculous words on the screen is just, it's just childish.
You won't do it?
Of course not. It's just ridiculous. I mean, we're going to be 19 around the TV, all the family, the children, the lot. But I think the children would just laugh at it. And what a ridiculous idea. And I just think whoever is in charge of the palace at that moment didn't have their marbles.
Some brighter news, though, for the royal family in terms of a host of major polls, including from the Daily Mail, which do suggest that support for the monarchy is strong. But you say there's a few caveats that Charles should be worried about.
Well, I think the polls were encouraging, but he's only got 54%, whereas the monarchy has 62%. And the point about this country is we believe in the monarchy. It's been there for 1,000 years. The alternative of President Prescott or President Blair is so appalling that we're delighted. And I do think that Princess Anne's interview with the Canadians,
stunning, wasn't it?
It just reminded us there is a woman who is not only solid and is such a force, but, she was an Olympic equestrian.
Yeah.
She's a woman who really has done her best. And most interesting of all, her children don't have titles. They're anonymous, unlike Meghan Markle's. And she really is a realist. And I think it's very interesting that she chose this moment to give an interview and say she didn't believe in a slimmed-down monarchy, she didn't believe in reparations, she doesn't believe in the woke agenda. She really is a solid Englishwoman.
I mean, what's your experience with Princess Anne? Do you feel like she's on board with her elder brother? Because I loved the message that Anne was putting out there, but it's not in line with the much more woke approach that we've seen from the King in recent weeks, especially in regards to historic slavery reparations.
Well, I think Princess Anne and obviously her brother, they remember each other from as childhood and then teenagers and all the rest. And I had this extraordinary encounter with her when I was writing the Charles biography at Ascot, and someone introduced her to me in a private box and said, Anne, this is Tom Bower. He said, who's writing your brother's biography? Oh, she said, why are you doing that? Well, I thought I could make it up and said, well, because he's very fascinating. What? Rubbish, she said. And she has this wonderful direct... I got to tell you another...
Waspish.
I got to tell you another very funny... She and my wife went to school together at Benenden. My wife was about 3 or 4 years younger. And she saw my wife, and they hadn't seen each other since school. And there's Anne looking imperiously at her, and she says, hello, Wadley. Long time no see. She's
what a woman. You might say one of the great queens we never had, but hopefully she has more of an influence on Charles. Big news, Tom, you're going to be with us live at Buckingham Palace Thursday night for our special preview of the coronation, so I can't wait to see you then. But it's time now to reveal tonight's Greatest Britain and Union Jackass. And my superstar panel are back with me. Queen Amanda, who's your Greatest Britain nominee?
I'm nominating the actresses who play Beatrice and Eugenie in The Windsor's fantastic...
Oh, I haven't seen this.
Oh, Dan, it's just wonderful. They've done it in the whole thing, and in the coronation special, they keep going around going, hey, we're not invited to the coronation. It's because Daddy is so honourable. They say that the whole way through.
Well,
Best slim down the monarchy by cutting out all the Yorks.
I don't watch it because of my Channel 4 ban. Calvin Robinson, your nominee.
Quite right, too. Princess Anne, for her common sense approach and being pragmatic. Princess Anne is respecting tradition and not pandering, and that's what the King should be doing too.
Rebecca Reid.
I've gone for Anna Wintour and Bill Nighy. I was very excited because it looked like they were a couple. It transpires they may actually just be friends. But either way, she's an incredible businesswoman.
And this is basically because that was the big Met Gala where all of the worst people in showbiz gather in one room and they sort of went on the red carpet together. Oh, my goodness, I couldn't give more of less of a damn about that awful event with horrible people. Of course, today's greatest Briton is Princess Anne, who actually managed to conduct a bombshell royal interview without ruining her own career. Hallelujah. Union Jackass time, Queen Amanda.
It has to be Justin Welby, the Archbishop of Canterbury, for coming up with this stupid stunt of making King Charles the people's king. It's not going to happen, and that stupid oath, I will certainly not be taking it, even though I'm a staunch monarchist.
Calvin Robinson, your nominee.
I feel like I should just give it to Amanda, really. Sue Gray for not being impartial, helping to bring down Boris Johnson, and the party's under attack. It's awful.
I am so angry about this. If you missed the breaking news from earlier tonight, because obviously there's been a lot going on from Buckingham Palace, Sue Gray, the biggest hypocrite in Westminster, will not answer questions for the inquiry into whether she has stitched up her role as Labour Chief of Staff with Keir Starmer. Shame on her. And there we see the front page of the newspapers covering this right now. Rebecca Reid, your nominee.
I sense that it might not be a winner here, but Douglas Ross, who is Scottish Tory, who is basically using the ongoing and not concluded investigation to score political points rather than allowing it to come to a conclusion first.
So you're talking about the fact that he believes there should be a debate in Holyrood, the Scottish Parliament, into the scandal-ridden SNP. Do you know what, Rebecca Reid? You could not have got this more wrong. Because if all of the media and the Scottish political class turn their eye the other way, do you know what's going to happen?
Finish the investigation
The SNP are going to get away with too much.
No, this is the problem with the 24-hour news cycle. People are too hungry for too much too quickly. Let it finish first,
I didn't
then
remember
debate
you
it.
saying the same thing about the Partygate investigation, Rebecca.
All I said was I didn't care about the parties. We can
wonder why.
You and I are going to have words.
Wonder why. But look. Calvin's right. It's a tough call, but it's got to be Amanda Patel and Justin Welby, because everything woke he touches goes wrong. Queen Amanda, well done. Calvin Robinson, Rebecca Reid, my superstar panel, thank you so much. Thank you for your company tonight. I'm back again tomorrow from 9 p.m. Next up, it's Headliners with their brilliant, irreverent take on tomorrow's newspaper front pages. Good night.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind